This conference will now be recorded.
Can you hear me? I can't hear y'all though. That's my problem.
Now can you hear us?
Much better. I can hear you now.
Terrific. Okay, please say here.
Here.
We have
a quorum. Thank you. We have a pretty lengthy agenda this afternoon. I appreciate all of you being here. We'll get through it as quickly as we can. Can I have an approval of the agenda, please?
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented to us.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Then now can I have an approval of the minutes? Are there any questions, comments?
I saw no corrections needed.
Actually, I do, and they're all Scrivener.
I make a motion that we approve.
What?
Homicide detective.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes with any Scrivener errors to be taken care of as determined.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'm running through. Let's get this going.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes from the September 23rd meeting with any Scrivener errors corrected, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. All right. The first regular item on our agenda is the resolution on the Roswell Air Center water rights. Mr. Neb, this is yours.
Yes, ma'am. I will take it. Yeah, I was going to see what slides we have up there.
Should all be working. It was working. What is not? Oh, there we go.
Oh, you're blocked.
It's been working for us right now.
Okay, did we jump forward or is that the first
That should be
slide?
the first one.
All right. Okay, Madam Chair, Legal Committee, wanted to cover exactly what we're doing here. So for 53 years, we've owned the Air Center. And for 53 years, we've actually managed the revenue and expenses in a lot of different methods, and it's changed over that time. So over the years of owning the Air Center, the city has recognized the public infrastructure at the Air Center as the city's responsibility, as best I can tell. However, we've had the rates and fees and allocation of revenue and expenses. The rates and fees have been allocated to the Air Center, and the expenses have remained as an expense of the utility. And so over this course of the time, we go all the way back to the indenture document of the Air Center, where we took on all the ownership of all the infrastructure associated with the base, became the city's responsibility to maintain for the use of an air center. However, life changed a lot. You used to have a lagoon system, sewer system out there. We've closed the lagoon system. We've attached everybody to that. It used to have a water system of its own. There's 2,500 acre feet of water rights with the air center, equates to about 9% of the city's capacity for water rights. And so we have been taking the rates and fees of everybody on the base property, paying for water and sewer, and allocating those funds to the air center. And then we have not transferred the expenses with that. So this is what we're trying to clean up within that process. So we did consider a number of solutions, and our considered solutions, we do not want to make sure there is a negative impact to either the air center or the utility itself. So here's some of the options that we had considered with the air center utilities. Memorialize the revenue and allocate the expenses from all utility customers on the base and continue allocating that to the air center. The challenge we have with that is that we have an estimated $600,000 annually for the revenue. We have approximately $800,000 in expenses based upon the number of properties located at the air center. And we don't just charge what the work is for that year. We charge, the whole idea about critical mass of population is that we all share in the cost of the utility. So if we were to utilize that and just say we're going to keep taking the revenue based upon the utility billing out there, I believe that we're going to have a negative impact on the air center. Number two is to consider and recognize the city's ongoing financial assistance and federal guarantees to the air center as restitution of the indenturement and remove the utility billing completely as a revenue source. That is a possibility, that it is a debate or an argument that can be made, and I think you'll hear a little bit of that today as well too. It removes $600,000 though from the air center revenue, but it does not replace any of that revenue, source of revenue. And so that'll be the challenge we have. And as you know, requesting this through the FAA, which this would have to be done, is not a short-term process. We also looked at the ability to charge a utility premium to all the base businesses and residents out at the air center. And that would be so that we could continue to, because we set all of our rates and fees on the utility are based upon the cost of the service provided to the city of Roswell. We are not looking at our utility saying we need to move some of that money to the air center. And so our utility rate should be higher or lower for that. So what happens right now is that because we take all the revenue from those utility customers out there, we're putting a burden on the remainder of our utility customers to cover the entire cost of the service up in the city proper and at the air center. So we could look at charging a utility premium to those base businesses in recognition of the indenturement, and you would see the billings of all the ratepayers at the air center increase by 40% or about $60 a month. Note that our average bill is right around $90 a month right now. So any of our smaller base housing out there would see their bill rise from an estimated $90 a month to $150 in order to create the $600,000 that we are putting into the air center.
Repeat that one more time, please.
I don't know if I can.
Not all of it.
Yeah, not all of it.
Your equation, please.
All right. So if you take in the water and sewer utilities operate for $21 million a year overall. That's our expenses in our budget. If you take our number of utility customers, which are average about 20,000 utility customers total outside the city, and now I'm not doing the equation based upon residential or commercial. I'm just trying to use a comparison with that. We have 660 homes out there at the air center. We estimate that we probably have about 800 customers at the air center. When you take that, when you do that math, you divide it out, then you're going to come up with essentially about a $90 a month average bill, which equates pretty closely to what our normal customers are. Now you take the $600,000 that we have that is going into the air center from the utility. So we could charge a premium to all of the customers out there, which equates to about $40 a month or $60 a month. And then that would generate $600,000 that then can be placed into the air center.
Okay.
Did that help?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We don't like any one of these options, at least city staff as we walk through that. Our final recommendation on here is what the resolution is actually built to do. from the indenturement of the air center, from bringing over the air center to the city of Roswell, the water rights have not been altered. So there's 2,500 acre feet of water that is coming out of that is the water rights we acquired with the air center. Now we've added new wells over the time since we've acquired the air center. We've actually added change of infrastructure over time. We've done that, but the thing that has stayed true and firm is that we have 2,500 acre feet of water. So therefore, we wanted to memorialize the value of those water rights within the city of Roswell and set a rate equivalent to the current billing revenue. So we're right at, I believe the budget is generally around 625,000, but the actuals are about $550,000 is what the revenue is being generated. So when we set the resolution for that amount, that becomes about $220 per acre foot of water. And we pay from the water utility to the air center the ability for those rights, for those water rights in the sum of $220 per acre foot. And then that way we keep all of the expenses and all of the true revenue from the billing within the utility. So we're paying for the water rights, but because of all the changes to the infrastructure at the air center, we're not going to worry about that. I mean, we don't take everybody's property tax that pays in there and have the air center pay for the streets. I mean, we don't do that revenue or anything. So the whole idea was to kind of clean this thing up. We could not find anything, any kind of evidence within the records or anything that said that we should have been taking the money from the utility to that, other than that's the way it has always been. So we can't find any evidence of why we ended up even starting that process. And every rate increase to our utility bills at that time are based upon the need of the utility, not the need of the air center. And so it got really, it's been a really challenging process that we've had for a number of years. And so this was the recommended resolution as we talked with legal, air center, the water utility and everything else. This was the simplest and the most easiest way that we could get to a resolution where we can identify and recognize that the water rights are there. If this is approved by the city council, then essentially the billing of the utilities will no longer be allocated to the air center, but because we're paying for the water rights, they stay at a even balance for their budget. I'll stand for any questions.
Councilor Perry,
One thing, just question doesn't change anything, but just helps me understand perspective. The 2,500 acre feet, is that equates to 9% or 9% of 2,500 acre feet?
2,500 acre feet are the water rights that are associated to the air center. We have over 26,000 acre feet. So that's where the 9%, 9% is our total water rights from the air center.
And the advisory commission, the airport advisory commission.
Airport advisory commission,
I didn't get to watch it.
4-1.
Okay.
And again, yeah, and so they walked.
I tried to be there, but I didn't. I was going to watch it and I didn't get to see it. So I just wondered what their thoughts were on that as well. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What about fair play, right, Madam Chair?
So they say.
This is a rare event in that the city manager and the mayor disagree. This is actually my fault. I'm the one who tore the Band-Aid off this wound over 2.5, close to 3 years ago. When I discovered that the water customer revenue from those customers at the air center, both water and wastewater or sewer, does not go to the appropriate enterprise fund. I believe we have been shortchanging those two enterprise funds. Well, there used to be one, but they being. This goes back to when the base came to the city. In 1968, when the city assumed it, these were independent entities. In other words, there was an independent water system and there was an independent sewer system at the base, separate completely from the city's facilities. In 1977, the city of Roswell petitioned the offices of the state engineer This is documented in a memo that I did, I think it's 2 years ago. Also, you have seen my write-up on this, but just briefly, the Office of State Engineer was petitioned to allow the city to fully integrate that water system at the base into the city system. In other words, running the water lines down Main Street all the way and interconnecting them. There was some pushback about this. There was a lawsuit, and ultimately it ended up in the state Supreme Court. There's a state Supreme Court decision, which Mr. Parker can make available to you, from, I think, 1982 was the final decision, but I'm not positive on that. That said, the water rights are wholly and exclusively the property of the city of Roswell. This fiction that there is water rights belonging to the air center is, I maintain, a fiction. I also maintain that even if we were to, so we say, accept that the water department and sewer department have paid for those water rights over the last 43 years. Remember, the sewer system was closed. The wastewater treatment system at the base was closed in 1974, at which time a sewer line was run all the way over to the wastewater treatment system. All of the costs associated with that were borne by wastewater. All of the improvements and upgrades and maintenance dealing with water out there were not borne by the Airport Enterprise Fund, but by the Water Fund. As recently as Monday, after we had an extensive discussion, in this very same room, infrastructure voted to approve the purchase of basically a variable speed pump. $270,000 or something like that for a well at the quote air center. Who paid for that? Water department, not the airport. This is what's been going on literally for decades. And now it's time to correct this. Whether or not the FAA will say anything or not, they said nothing in 1977 when the lawsuit was brought. They made no appearance. They made no objection. Now, candidly, Commissioner Call from the Airport Advisory maintains that doesn't mean they agreed. That just not the record is moot. But the problem is it's going to be up to the FAA or the Corps of Engineers to make the case that this is not the correct way to handle it. The city has been a valid and good steward of this, and I believe now is the time to correct the improper flow of funds. This is not the way it should be, because water service out there is not an airport enterprise fund function. It is a water department function and a wastewater department function. Revenue should go to the entities that are providing the service. That is how we structure water and wastewater. On another note, solid waste has always gone to the solid waste. But at the time, there was a separate landfill back in 1968. So my disagreement with the city manager, and I appreciate him bringing this forward, and I appreciate the fact the intention is to stop the flow of revenue from customers at the quote base going to the Airport Enterprise Fund. But I don't believe we need to compensate the Airport Enterprise Fund. And let me finish by saying, I don't think there's a stronger advocate for the Air Center than myself. I have been highlighting this. I've been promoting this. I've been advocating for funds for this from the get-go. But this is not right. This is fundamentally a wrong way to flow the money. And I believe the proper way is to put the revenue from customers into the appropriate enterprise fund and call it good. If the FAA wants to try and make a better case, let them try. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Does the 2,500 acre foot that you're counting here, does that include this new well being drilled, or is that separate?
Well, the drilling of a well utilizes the same acre feet of water. A new well does not generate new water rights. And so we are utilizing however many wells to draw out that water out of that acre feet that we've received from them.
On that note, Counselor, the 1977 petition dealt with drilling supplemental wells for the water right. In other words, you have the water right for an area, but then you ask the state engineer for permission to drill a well. We've actually drilled 3 supplemental wells in connection with one of the water rights. I don't have the notes in front of me to tell you exactly which one. All of those drilling costs were assumed by the water department.
Well, I understand that, but it's if I have a product that I'm going to sell to someone, it's their responsibility for if they want it to get the means to get to it, to bring it to them, whether that's bread that I'm buying from Pennsylvania or if that's, so that's what I'm trying to understand and differentiate. The 2,500 acre feet is what belong to the base.
But we do not charge the ones who lease water rights from us to maintain the wells they're getting from it. We deliver to them because we drill and maintain and handle those pumps. Now we lease them the water. We basically sell them the water, but we maintain all the pumps as the owner of the water right. We maintain the wells. We drill if a well goes bad, we drill the supplemental at our cost. We do not charge the farm that is getting the water.
So, Mr. Neb, what is what would this to the enterprise of the airport if you took out $550,000 a year?
The 2022 fiscal year 22 budget is a little over 17 million. I would assume that based upon the capital projects of all being granted, a lot of the funding being granted and other monies associated with, I think we have an operational cost of somewhere between $2.5 to $3 million operationally, which means that we will reduce that budget by $600,000 if there is not the revenue to support that.
Okay.
And I would maintain that parking fees this year to date are $1.3 million. Last year, at this point, they were $600,000. That's just the parking fees at the Air Center. The Air Center is healthier now than it has ever been before. This is the time to correct this allocation.
I'm going to assume, Mr. Mayor, by your being here and talking about this today, that you were the nay vote.
Actually, I wasn't. I wanted this to come forward.
Okay.
Because the ultimate reality is this. The council as a whole will decide this one, and there'll be a debate. And, I'm making my case, and you guys will vote, and it will go forward to council. I am assuming that if it goes forward, whatever form it takes, don't put it on consent. This needs to be talked about.
No, I understand.
So it wouldn't stay there anyway, would it?
Well, I don't have the authority to pull from consent.
No, I know, but others do.
So,
But that's the other wacky thing.
Mr. Neb, what was the, I did not get to watch to hear, what was the thought process behind the commission?
I have a commissioner here.
Yeah, you can ask the vice.
You have one here as well too. If you want to put him on the spot for it. Yes.
Aren't you glad?
Sorry, Mike.
Well, get what you deserve.
I believe I made the motion to.
Yeah, you did. That's just as loud a debate.
The indenture documents.
Do you want to come up here, Mike? I'm sorry, so that
And make sure that Mr.
Mr. Foster can hear you. Thank you very much.
The indenture documents from the Air Force transferring the base to the city of Roswell really created the concern, the issue. And it's really about how do we best fund the Air Center and the Air Enterprise with the resources that were allocated to the Air Center for the city. And that's really what this is about, in my estimation. The dissenting vote was from Commissioner Call, who was concerned about the city putting a price tag on water rights. That was her only concern. It wasn't about keeping this funding stream active the way it currently is. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's appropriate. We have to pay for the air center operations no matter how we look at it. And all you're doing is moving money around. And that's why we recommended we leave it the way it was.
Leave the resolution the way it is.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Madam Chair, I think that, yeah, we are seeing revenue on park planes, but that's because we're getting the advantage of a situation that America's in right now, that the world's in right now. And hopefully America and the world's not going to stay in this situation forever. So we can't just assume that we're going to stay at that. So with the recommendation that's been given from the, and I'm sorry, Councilor Foster may have some things to say as well. Councilor Foster, I apologize.
No problem. I have a couple of things that I think that, I mean, I've talked to Joe about this, and one thing that I'm uncertain of, and of course the cost of water rights changes on almost a daily basis, but if we had the figures of the 2,500 acre feet and how much that was the worth of it, because when the base was transferred to us, I mean, the water rights were transferred to us as well. And I know the argument is we've put enough into the base that we can justify those water rights now being the city of Roswell's, and that's why we shouldn't have to pay the $550,000. But until we have those figures in front of us, I think it's hard to make that decision. And so I'm comfortable going ahead with this and doing it this time. Doesn't mean we have to do this every year. And this time next year, if we have the figures, we could turn around and say, no, those water rights are ours, not even though the base is ours also. So just trying to separate it. I know it gets to be a tar baby kind of, and so it's kind of hard to figure out what we're gonna do. But I'm comfortable going either way with this. So, sorry.
Great, thanks.
On the fence.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments on this resolution?
The only other thing I will add to it, there was a study done in the last few years in New Mexico about water rights altogether. Water rights across the entire state are all over the place. It is essentially, it's an economic value to it too, is what's somebody willing to pay.
That's right.
You're not setting the water rights forever either. If there's a future value of the water rights to change or anything else, the reason we set the water rights at the level it currently is set at is so that there is not a negative impact to the funding of the air center currently. I would agree with the mayor that we're having additional revenue sources out there, but in every one of our conversations, we are trying to put that money to capital improvements of the center. If we back up and we utilize some of those dollars in order to do the operational, we lose $600,000 that can go to buying the next hangar that's sitting on somebody's property. And so it's like there is a process that we want to be careful with as we walk through this. He's not incorrect. I think the thing where both the mayor and I actually agree with is that we need to resolve this. For 53 years, in my mind, it has been up in the air as to which way it's supposed to go. And so this seemed to be the simplest way. This puts the power into the city council's hands as to how to adjust it and change it into the future. And we have eliminated the question mark into the future as well too. A lot of different variables. The idea of going back to the FAA and stating that we believe that we have invested as much or more as these water rights, the value of those water rights all time and time again, is not lost on me either. We can always go after that information. I think, like Councilor Foster had mentioned, is that doesn't short circuit this at all. What this does is it corrects an issue. And I was under the obligation to bring this to you before the end of the year based upon our budget conversations.
Appreciate it. And then I think we have to remember it is a resolution. And resolutions are a statement of policy and they can be changed or eliminated or whatever over time. So yes, Mr.
Madam Chair, if I may add, let's keep in mind that this was really a starting point, is the way we looked at it, because we don't have any documentation of this. There's City of Roswell's water rights, no matter how you look at it. Roswell, we own the water rights. We're not shipping off to someone else or selling them off to another organization. So we maintain them. It's a matter of county. I think the starting point is real peace, because there's nothing in all the documents I've looked at, that Joe's looked at, that identifies where we're at. And I think it's just that's what we felt was it was a good starting point to move forward with some documentation. And should our air center continue to see great revenues, which it may not, then we have to find ways to balance that budget.
Thank you. All right. Any more comments or questions? A motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council on the regular agenda of the next meeting, this resolution establishing a fee for the use of the Roswell Air Center water rights in the amount of 2,500 acre feet as part of the Roswell water distribution supply system.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move this resolution forward with a recommendation?
With recommendation, yes.
With a recommendation to approve to the full city council. Any other discussion or comments, concerns? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Hearing none, the motion carries, and this will go to full council with our recommendation. Thank you all. Next, we have the Boys and Girls Club lease agreement. We also have a service agreement with them, but let's discuss the lease agreement first. No one's here from the Boys and Girls Club? Oh, there's Tim, I didn't see you.
Yes, and I brought Aaron Emmerich. He's currently our board treasurer. He'll be our board president in January.
Oh,
Let's make sure that Barry can hear.
thank you. Nice to meet you and good to have you both
I can
here.
hear him.
Could you hear that?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. So this is good. This again, like I say, is the lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Chavis and Lincoln counties. This is for the property that they've been occupying at 201 South Garden. And whose is this? Your?
Well, Todd would normally be doing this, but he's out on a medical issue. I think he'll be good for the council meeting, but I told him I would handle it.
Great. Okay.
So you pretty much covered most of what the major points of the agreement are, and they're up there on the screen.
Thank you.
Basically, we've had this has been going, I don't know how long they've been there. They've been there since at least as long as I've been here, and I'm sure for a lot longer. The last time this stuff came up, I remember being kind of irked by the fact that the services agreement and the lease agreement were a Venn diagram in terms of what they addressed. So there's a huge amount of overlap in them. So what I've tried to do now that they both kind of come up at the same time, the services agreement and the lease agreement, is separate them out and have the lease stuff be in the lease agreement and the services stuff be in the service agreement, have them be separate things and not overlap in terms of the scope of what is the obligations of the agreements are. So with that, I guess I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Let me make just a few notations, or let me ask you first questions. On the first page of the lease agreement, which is page 9 of our packet, the first whereas the city is the fee owner. I've never seen that term before.
Fee simple ownership means that you own it 100% without you don't own it in jointly with somebody else. You are the owner, you own it without other obligations to it. It's one of those.
Good.
It goes back to like medieval.
I'm sure.
Fee simple absolute is the
Really?
term. Yeah.
See, I don't know about you guys, but I never heard that first.
Well, I would prefer
You
the
have?
whole fee simple absolute. I would have understood if it was.
Oh, I'm sure. And I would have asked you and you would have told me.
Oh, no, I wouldn't.
Oh, okay. Then on, let's see, in the recital again, the number 1, which is granting clause, it talks about that we're granting them permission to use the premises together with the improvements and then the adjacent park facility. I'm just curious, do we maintain that park and is it part of our park system?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, so,
It's a public park.
okay, okay.
We don't have exclusive use of it.
All right, and you're not maintaining it either. We are as one of our parks.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we didn't mention this and it needs to be said. You've got it up here that the term of the lease is 5 years with up to 3 additional 5-year extensions. I'm assuming those would come to council every 5 years or doesn't really say?
No, the way that we have done these is that when, if you build in the renewals into the actual agreement and it's approved by council, then those are just done at the discretion of staff because council has already approved those extensions.
Okay, okay. And so that's what we have to remember, I think, in approving this, that
If you would like it changed, we could change the language to say, upon mutual written consent of the parties, subject to, we could add a sentence there that the consent of the city shall be by vote of the council or something, if that's what you would like.
Madam
Any
Chair,
comments? Yep.
but my only comments would be if I'm on the council for the next 20 years, I don't see a problem. But I've always had concerns with binding another council.
Obligating another council.
So, and which it doesn't technically, but still, we just don't know who's going to be on the council in 4 years and 6 years, 8 years. So that's just always been something I've always tried to be sensitive to.
Well, I know, and I won't speak for Boys and Girls Club, but I know that they are looking for something. They had requested that, because I had originally done it as a year to year, and they had requested that those longer terms, to reflect the fact that they kind of need some stability in the long run.
So I will say, I really enjoy coming to these meetings to see how you guys operate, because the Village of Ruidoso operates differently. In a case like this, where it comes up for renewal, it will come before the council in Ruidoso for just as simple as usually a consent agenda item. And I would have no problem with that. The other thing is remember through your budget process is if for some reason the city decides you don't want us there anymore, you just defund it and you're not obligated by contract any longer.
Well, and I would mention, right, but I should mention this too, is there's a 180-day written notice on either party built into this agreement.
I think I heard Barry, he may be.
Go ahead, Barry, or Councilor Foster?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've got to, for clarity, I know you two know that I sit as the vice president on this board, but also for the record, I want it noted that I am the vice president on the board for the Boys and Girls Club. But
Thank you.
I don't think that we're binding ourselves to 20 years because we do have the 180-day out. I don't foresee a problem with any board or the Boys and Girls Club and the City Council. I know in the past we've had some troubles and difficulties with the Boys and Girls Club prior to this club taking over, but even then the council wasn't of the mind to get rid of the lease. I mean, we came close a couple of times, but we still never pushed that. So I don't foresee a problem that we would, get to that point, but we do have the 180-day clause on there.
Right.
One of the things I do want to mention that I have talked to staff and talked to Tim about is the 3% CPI rent adjustment. I don't see that that's even up until just a couple of years ago, we didn't charge rent at all to the Boys and Girls Club. And I can see that with our normal leases, we do that because we see a trying to bring it up to a market value. We're not at this point looking at trying to get market value for the Boys and Girls Club building. So I don't believe we should have that 3% CPI in there. If we need to adjust the rent, we can do it at the 5-year periods. But like I said, up until just a few years ago, we didn't charge a penny for it until DFA said that we needed to. And so, but that's my say in this right now.
Thank you. Would you like to make a comment?
Well, yeah, so it's been 2017. It was October of 2017. Believe me, I remember the day. We finally got the acquisition agreement signed with the old club and we took over. So at that point, we have been in control of the club since then. And it was actually, I don't remember if I made the suggestion, but I definitely provided the initial template for the lease, which was similar to what we had in Ruidoso. And the reason being is with DFA, it wasn't considered a reasonable lease. And that would preclude us from possibly getting funding for the club. So I came in and said, let's do $1,000 a month. That's what we pay in Ruidoso. And that helped us to get the CDBG loan of that $750,000 that came in for the renovation. You guys put up the rest of the money, which we're very thankful for. But I always look at things as far as being fair and equitable to both sides. I also know, as you spoke, you never know who's going to be on council in 5 years. And we want to be protected because sometimes the politics change. And, what we're seeing lately in some areas of the country are very different outcomes. Now, the 180 days, it's in there that the city may terminate the agreement with or without cause upon 180-day written notice in advance by the majority vote of the city council. That's an out for you. We asked for the 180 days because should you decide not to renew or to do something different with the building, it gives us 6 months to find another location. So we're not scrambling and say, okay, we got 3 weeks, where are we going to go? But, this is, we've gone back and forth a few times and it was mostly just minor little stuff based on the original draft. And we're looking forward to getting this down, getting it in, and it provides us with the reason we asked for the 5 years and then the 3 additional. It gives us 20 years that we know where we're going to be and how we can help to serve the next generation of kids past the ones that we're serving already. So we will be a major part of this community for a long time. And we just want to continue that and not have to worry about any issues going forward.
Well, I hope you don't take my questioning as being negative. I just think there are issues that need to get out on the table.
I agree.
The reason of my questioning.
And if you don't ask those questions, you're not doing your job. I don't take anything personal.
I'm going to come visit your councils.
Oh, you should. I mean, our council is totally different.
I know that.
Tell you.
Actually, I have been there. It was years ago.
Yes.
It's
It's
a whole different
the
administration.
last 7 years. Well, I'm up for re-election in March, so it's almost been 8 years. Oh, sorry. It's totally different. But I would be asked, I'm the stickler on our council that's always asking the details. So you're not doing your job if you don't ask them. And there's no offense taken.
Thank you. Good.
And if I can just really briefly address the CPI point, staff's position there on the 3% or CPI, the reason why we put that into, or we're starting to put that into every contract is that from where we're at, because of inflation, if you don't put that in there, what actually happens, in real terms is that over time, that $1,000 actually becomes less and less and less money. The 3% is not actually an increase in real terms, only in nominal terms. And the actual price, when you adjust for inflation, remains the same.
Thank you. That was a good
Well,
explanation.
and I understand that, but we're not talking about really renting a commercial venture. That's not what we're talking about. And we're talking about the Boys and Girls Club provides a service that if they weren't providing it, we would be the ones having to go in and fill that position. So, I mean, and that's why the service agreement's coming up after this, because we pay them to provide the service that we otherwise would have to be providing. And so that's why, I mean, I understand it in our regular leases, but this isn't a commercial venture. So we're not trying to make up inflation or whatever. Yet, when we get to the service agreement, we'll be talking about it too. I mean, we can leave it in there, but there again, in that service agreement where we're paying them to provide that service, then we need to increase that a percentage every year too. So, I mean, it's going to be a wash for the city, but that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair,
yes,
something I
Councilor
did not
Perry.
say at the beginning that I think would help me is if we could withhold action on this until we talk about the next as well and hear both of them. So I have a real, is that okay with you?
Is that all right?
It's your meeting.
I don't have it, you're making that formal request?
I am.
Okay, let's see if we can finish the discussion on this
Sure.
and then we'll go to that issue. Are there any other questions or comments?
I thought it was written well. The indemnification is
Yeah,
solid. I think everything, I see this as something that's beneficial to both parties in as far as protections and clear outlining of what the expectations are from us, the expectations from Boys and Girls Club from the other end. And I think that having clarity will fix a lot of problems in the future. So
I agree. Okay, any other questions or concerns about the lease? Okay, if no one objects, let's do what Counselor Perry asked you. Let's go ahead and have the discussion now on the Boys and Girls Club service agreement, which begins on page 27 of our packet. This has 3 exhibits attached to it. The first is the scope of work. The second is the compensation, and the third is the insurance. This also has the same terms we just talked about with the 5-year period and 3 additional 5 years. I think other than the scope of work, which is more specific, this is pretty much the same.
Right.
With the same organization. I'm going to page 37 of the packet, which is Exhibit A, the scope of work. This is Juanita's, and she was up here. She left it. I don't know whether she wanted to talk about this or not.
She had to go, but
Okay,
I don't mind talking about it to the extent that there's
Go
more
ahead.
to say about it than what you've already mentioned.
yes, there is. But I thought she would do it. Basically, this is deliverables of providing quality time and quality care for the young people of Roswell. Is there anything specific we want to talk about?
This scope of work is actually identical to the one, pretty much identical to the one that was in the previous
Yes.
services agreement. I just kind of reorganized it a little bit and then moved it to a separate exhibit so that it was all in one place. And then took those things out of the lease agreement that were basically the same thing. And so there's no change in the scope from what they have already been doing, just reorganizing the format. And then, as you mentioned, all of the boilerplate, we're trying to keep pretty much the same across all of our agreements.
And the compensation is $32,000 each year.
Right, quarterly installments, and that again is the same amount that they were paying before. We're just pushing that on through again.
And then again, as I said, Exhibit A is the insurance.
C
C is the insurance. I've already done A and B, haven't I? Oops.
And again, that's just our same
Our
insurance
standard.
form that we're trying to do for everybody, and you just kind of tick the boxes on whichever insurance is appropriate
Right.
for that.
Right. Okay, so any comments about the service agreement, Tim, or you?
Well, I would say that one of the nice things about this new agreement is it aligns with your fiscal year. The previous agreement, the quarters were wacky. We struggled with that with staff a number of times because it went from one fiscal year into the other. It didn't end on a regular quarter. I think
Because of renewing.
Yeah, I don't
timing
remember
was.
when it started and
Yeah.
it was kind of odd. So this gets it in, so that 1 year is strictly, well, it would start in January.
January.
But
The
it would be
calendar.
6 months, and then from there, then it ties in the quarters exactly with your fiscal year. That's a main advantage here for us and for you, because to be honest with you, I know I need to submit an invoice every quarter, and it's like, forget when the quarter is, but to me, I'm on the regular quarters, so. But this is almost identical to the original agreement. Yes.
Good. Do you know when I worked for nonprofits in this community, I have to tell you, I had federal, state, and United Way funding, so I had 3 fiscal years to work with. And in those days, we didn't have the computerization that we have today to keep that separate, so I understand.
I'm doing the same thing. In fact,
They were still using advocates.
Yeah, pretty much in my day, yes.
understand. Yesterday, we just got notice that we're going to be getting a large federal funding grant,
Great.
but we're not sure if it's going to follow the federal fiscal year or which fiscal year, and it flows through Boys and Girls Club. But you know, that one is going to be really nice. I don't have the details of it yet. I just know it's a 2-year grant that deals with opioid abuse
Interesting.
among the community and children.
Great.
So I'm so excited to get that.
That's
grant.
terrific.
There's 6 clubs in New Mexico that are getting it.
Great.
So
That's congratulations.
that's up my alley because I used to do juvenile drug court and you know, I was an alternate judge for a while there and all that kind of stuff. So I've seen the damages that opioid addiction can do, abuse of those. There's good stuff to it and there's horrible stuff. So.
Well, I bet you have an October 1 beginning fiscal year. I just
It
bet you.
doesn't kick in until January 1, so I'm really confused.
Oh, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Counselor Foster, any comments on the service agreement?
Well, the one thing that I'm going to make a motion to amend is to change it to 40,000 a year, just so that we take into account the cost adjustment. And then the other thing that I was going to point, the CPI that we have in our lease, if we're tying this to 5 years, then we're not changing this, you know, every year. So it's won't change for 5 years. So there again, you know, are we going to put a CPI on this? And then there's a third clause in the lease agreement. It talks about there's a penalty phase if we don't pay within a certain amount of time. Well, you know, speaking for the city, we've several times have missed payments to the Boys and Girls Club and had to make it up 2 at a time and missed a whole quarter. So, you know, those are the things that we need to, you know, be equitable. If we're going to have this service agreement, it should be mirrored to the lease agreement, because this is us paying the Boys and Girls Club for a service while they're paying us in the lease agreement.
Okay,
And I'll just add one comment with that.
certainly.
I think part of the reason, from what I understand, the reason that we're requesting the 32 to go to 40 primarily is just, I mean, minimum wage when this started was at 7 something an hour, and now it's 11 something an hour. So I think that's kind of the reasoning behind it. I
Okay,
just wanted to throw out there.
thank you.
We weren't just making that up.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah.
Second. We got a motion.
Was
to amend.
that a motion?
Yeah.
I'm
Yes, I make a motion that we change the 32,000 to 40,000.
Okay, is there a second?
I will take it for discussion.
Thank you. Okay,
This is just, this motion to amend is just for the 40,000 or all of the things you mentioned, Counselor?
Well, no, I think we can be pretty much on top of not paying them late, but there again, the 40,000 helps for the minimum wage going from where it, you know, from the $7.50 to the almost $11, and then you know, this is tying us in for 5 years at that. So then that's what we're looking at. It's not going to increase for 5 years until we come up for another one. So I'm not saying we put a CPI on this. I'm just saying when you look at, when we go back to the lease, that's one of the other key things is we're not adjusting every year on what we pay the Boys and Girls Club to provide this service. So should we be adjusting our lease? I'm not sure every year. But the motion is just for the 40,000.
got it. Okay, and we have a second to your motion. Any further discussion?
Except for a parliamentary inquiry, we don't even have a motion on the table for an amendment to a motion to be made. And that's
Right,
not
that's true.
Counselor Foster's fault at all. It's just how the conversation came up. So how do you want us to?
I don't mind a motion to amend the document at this point, I think that that's okay. It doesn't give me a lot of, I think we're okay.
Okay,
We're ahead of the first.
we are.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable dealing with this right now, then we can go back to the other, then I'm okay with that. Just-
Can I just address what you said? Because you know I'm a stickler too, but I think in these cases, when we're dealing with city business, it's so much easier and beneficial to talk about it before we have a motion. And I understand parliamentary procedure says motion first, but we deviate from that.
I think our
So,
governing
thank you.
body rules actually address this and say there does not need to be any motion pending in a committee in order to discuss the item. It's actually.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Okay,
address.
so we're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. But good point.
Okay.
So go ahead. Did you want to address?
No, I would just say that I didn't understand necessarily the upping in the amount, but that makes a lot more sense now that we recognize with the minimum wage and different things, that's a significant increase. It's not a significant increase if you're just talking about someone working 5 hours a week and only having one employee, but when you're talking about that's a significant bite. I will also say that I recognize the significant input that this organization puts into our community. I just had a meal with someone whose granddaughter has been through a very difficult life so far, we'll just say that. And they just didn't know what to do with her, not well in school, not well with making friends, not well with her emotions. I mean, just everything just out of whack. And this gentleman was almost in tears across the table from me, just talking about the impact that Boys and Girls Club has made upon her, how it has affected how she deals with school, how it's affected how she cooperates at home with family. And it's just been a major influence, and that's just one life. So
yes,
it's well worth what we're investing in it, and I think it's with making a better community. So I have no concerns there.
Thank you. And I actually agree with what you've said. I've known of cases as well that have been helped immensely by the Girls and Boys Club, Boys and Girls Clubs. So I want to call it Girls.
Call whatever you like.
There's
That's
still
fine.
people that call it the boys club, so.
Well, I remember when it was just the Boys Club, of course.
And
Okay.
Councilor Perry, I believe if it's the same child that I'm thinking that you're talking about, when you started talking, I can almost picture exactly who it is. That young lady was just awarded Member of the Week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
tremendous.
That always
She's an
great.
amazing little kid.
Amen. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we have an amendment, which isn't official, I guess, on the floor to change the agreement on the service agreement for the Boys and Girls Club from $32,000 a year to $40,000. And that obligates basically for the first 5 years of the contract. So any further discussion on that? I guess I say all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. None opposed. So if we do them before this goes to council, correct that to 40,000 as opposed to 32.
Yep.
Okay. Any
And-
other questions or comments on?
Just on parliamentary again, I don't have a problem with, even though it was made as an amendment, that is just a motion carrying this on to full council, correct? Okay.
No. Oh,
Or do we need to vote
That
now?
was just the-
that was just.
that was just on the amendment, right?
The 32,
All right.
raising the 32 to 40.
I mean,
So
I'm
now,
okay
any
with
other-
taking it to full council too, but we need to do another motion for that, I think.
All right.
Is there any further questions or discussion about the agreement itself now for the services of the Boys and Girls Club for 5 years with 3 5-year extensions? Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. Any other comments? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion, please.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council on regular agenda, a recommendation to approve the Boys and Girls Club service agreement in the amount of 40,000, being the only change that was made.
Okay.
So that's something else you want
For 5 years.
for 5 years? with-
5 year extension. Okay, at 40,000 a year.
Correct.
Okay, good. Anything further? Thank you. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries, so that will go to full council. Let's go back to the lease.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council on the regular agenda, the lease with the Boys and Girls Club in the amount of $1,000 per month for the first year to be raised at 3% CPI.
Five years.
This says whichever is greater, so I'm confused by that. After the first year, the term rent will be adjusted every year by 3% by 3% or consumer price index, whichever is greater, subject to all the terms and conditions of the lease.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? No, I need a second.
Second, but at this point, sorry, it skipped on me. That's one of the reasons I took my video off, is sometimes this thing starts skipping. I still am kind of concerned about the CPI, just because this isn't really a commercial lease. But and that's something that, I mean, Joe, are you comfortable with the CPI being on it, or how do you feel?
Counselor, I believe that there is enough information in the remainder of the agreement that if this becomes problematic at a later date, we will be able to correct it. I mean, you are correct that the agreement, essentially we have a service agreement with the Boys and Girls Club through the Recreation Department. And that's what this thing is that if Boys and Girls were not serving in this capacity, we would either do it ourselves or do it a different way. But if I think the idea is that trying to standardize all of our building lease agreements is why that 3% or CPI or greater is in there. I believe that there's processes that we can run through if it becomes problematic in the future. I guess that's my fastest answer for that.
All right.
Okay.
Then I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. We voted?
No, we haven't.
But you did the second.
Motion second.
Okay.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of sending this to full council as discussed with all the terms and conditions of the lease, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay. Glad you'll be with us.
When is your council meeting?
18th. We've changed that date.
On the federal fiscal calendar.
Well, I'll put it on my calendar to make sure that I'm here.
Great.
I believe, Joe, do you know, is that the day when COG is having their follow-up on the region?
That is the same day.
That is?
I
Okay,
think
makes it
so.
perfect. I'll be here all day then.
Good.
So, okay. If you don't mind, I want to stay and sit and listen to the cannabis
Sure.
discussion.
You can
'cause
sit
that-
right where you are.
No, I'll move. But that's something that's coming to our council next
Is
month.
what?
The cannabis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. We'll see you later.
Sure.
Thank you all.
Good to meet you. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is actually another service agreement with the Economic Development Corporation. Mr. Espiritu is here. Parker,
Yeah, I will introduce this one since Juanita could not be with us.
thank you. Appreciate it.
So this is a services agreement with the EDC. We've had an agreement with them for some time for business development, retention, and expansion, I think was all of the verbs in the title of the document. And so as we move forward with this, it was time to re-up the contract a couple of months ago, but we wanted to tweak the scope of services a little bit in a couple of places, enough so that doing a amendment was not efficient. We decided to go back and execute a whole new document. And so that's why we're here with this, even though we did one last year. So as in the case of our other agreements, I have tried to use the same standard boilerplate and then move the scope of work to an exhibit with everything in one place. And then we're also doing an exhibit on the metrics and the compensation, providing information about monthly, quarterly, and annual reporting, as well as the typical presentation to council on an annual basis that also occurs.
Yes.
So all of that is in there. This contract would allocate $100,000 for the services and make available an additional $25,000 for special projects, which are specified and pre-approved by the city manager.
Yes.
No, that's it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from counselors on this agreement? Mike, would you care to make any statement?
EDC is happy to partner with the city of Roswell to continue to drive business attraction opportunities with not only the Air Center, but throughout the city in not only industrial projects, but even other type of activity. As you know, some of the other tenets of what we do within our scope of work is not only attraction, but and recruitment, but business retention and expansion, which is really critical to keeping our small business owners in check in the regards of looking for red flags in case they have problems. More importantly, find them resources and other means so they can be successful and hopefully grow their jobs, grow their business to provide more opportunity for the citizens of Roswell. Lastly, we're very deeply involved with workforce development. As you know, developed not only within the particular education sectors in our high schools, but close coordination with Eastern New Mexico and even in the schools in the Lower Valley that are outside of the city of Roswell. We believe that the workforce concern throughout the country, especially here as well, and the partnerships we've had with the city for quite some time, especially recently with the workforce events, the hiring events that we're having, are important to providing opportunities for people to get employed for businesses that need staffing so desperately. The only other comment, Madam Chair, that I have is I provided some changes, and I don't know if they were made in the documents. I don't have set with me. I saw it in the hallway. I don't think they're completely accurate, but there's some language that the city manager and I discussed, so we wanted to change.
Okay.
I want to make sure that gets in there, as well as some of the numbers on the metrics.
Okay, so the changes are not in the actual agreement, they're in the exhibits, or were there some actually in the?
They're in the exhibits.
Okay, because actually I've caught a few that concern me a little bit in the exhibits, so I'm not sure.
Madam Chair, one example is we had planned to reach out. It was a very ambitious goal of 20 businesses a week.
I question.
And after, I think what happened was I fat fingered the number. It was supposed to be a 10, not a 2, 20. And I mean, that's a awful lot of folks to contact. I don't have the staffing for that. I have one person dedicated for BR&E. We couldn't do a proper job in providing the resource back to our business.
That in Exhibit B.
Yes.
I couldn't remember where I saw it.
57.
Okay,
It's 1E,
I've got it.
Roman numeral 3.
And the language there, I questioned that 20, but I also questioned the support and testify at every JTIP meeting. You're only going to go to those where you have a representative.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Company.
Whatever company that is within the city of Roswell that has a JTIP application that we have helped,
Sure.
and we'll help, even if we don't help.
Right.
We, the EDC, normally it's me, will testify with that company to the JTIP policy board for approval. I will share with you, Madam Chair, that and we've had several, as you're aware of, and everyone we've achieved 100% of the funds requested. So we've been very successful with all those applications, and we'll continue so.
But like I say, I don't think the intent is for you to go to every JTIP meeting if you don't have
No, ma'am.
a client.
I don't have that.
Okay.
I don't have the luxury of that.
So there's a little bit of tweaking, I think, that needs to happen with the scope. I'm a little concerned of the emphasis on, let's see, providing special assistance to the Air Center, and we're talking about working with Eastern and some other places to work with employees, and it talks about only at the Air Center. So I'd like to see that expanded just a little bit. So I wonder if we can go ahead and recommend this to full council, but with some changes to the exhibits.
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
Are we going to be, because of our inability to have quorums with other committees, moving forward with another legal before?
Yeah, we're planning on doing
We
this.
may have them every week.
I'm just thinking, I know that I had to, and I think Councilor Foster had
Yeah.
to. What do you think, Madam Chair, of giving the opportunity for those changes to be made in that
Sure.
period at that
We
time?
can bring it back at the special legal committee.
I'd sure like to clean up anything at that meeting before we
That
get to
sounds
full
great.
council.
I'd forgotten we still have another meeting before
Okay with you.
council.
And there have not been any requests that are concerning to either party on cleaning up the documents. So, yeah, so I think that would work very well.
Okay, great. So any questions or concerns about the actual agreement itself? Not looking, or you don't know because you don't know if your changes are in here or not.
There's one important change that City Manager and I discussed. It was a phrase, talked about EDC being the lead agency for all projects in the city. And that really can't happen because a lot of projects come directly to the city, not to EDC first. I think we talked about us being more of a business. You remember the terminology, Joe?
Yeah, the intent is, of course, for the EDC to be a business advocacy for that. And they are also we called it a support agency is really what it was to the entire economic development piece. And so their job is to help bring JTAP to everybody. Their help is to go see if there's any other additional funds that can take the weight off of our businesses. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's anything in there that we've seen that has any problem with that. But the whole idea was to make sure that they understand the work that the EDC does is work that nobody else can really do. I mean, that's the
Exactly, of course.
We did address some of that on page 55. It was subsection I, serve as a support agency for the city to coordinate, evaluate, and recommend incentive actions.
Okay, that was, thank you. That was the.
I remember that we had addressed that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was my concern. And the only concern, Madam Chair, I have is displaying my name. And if I wish, the old fashioned way, payroll signature, you may have heard that term before, maybe in the military. But if you could please have Michael versus Mike, because I sign all agreements. with
That's your,
my
okay.
name.
That's.
No, I
Parker, while we're looking at things, there's some reference. Oh, shoot. Okay, in the exhibit C, which is compensation, in that first paragraph on page 59, in the middle of it, it refers to requirements in paragraph 6. Oh, and exhibit B. I was thinking of exhibit B. There's no 6 of them. So maybe that's correct. I'm sorry, that may be.
Yeah, because you'll see paragraph 6 of the main agreement.
We're talking of the main, yeah, okay.
Well, we can clarify that. We can say paragraph 6 of this agreement and exhibit B, or something like that, if you want to.
That would help, yeah. Because that was my mess up, my interpretation of it being paragraph 6.
It's a little unclear. So we will read that the RRCC EDC shall also comply with the reporting requirements in paragraph 6 of this agreement and exhibit B.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what I'm hearing is that we will postpone actual action on this to our November 6th, I believe it is. 4th, special legal committee meeting that we're having at 4 o'clock that day. So we'll get these cleared up by that time.
Do you want to do a formal motion to postpone it, or do you just want?
No, I just
say it. Okay, fair enough.
Madam Chair, if I may just request that I receive a copy before the next meeting so I can
Yes,
review it.
definitely.
Make sure we have everything covered before.
Right.
Thank you.
For sure, thank you.
Thank you for all y'all do. Really do
Yes.
appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to serve this community, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. We are now on number 5, which is an ordinance on our Clean Air Act. Mr. Mavers, are you you're going to present this, please?
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I want to thank you all for letting me present this. Item number 5 is our updated ordinance creating the Clean Air Act. This act was originally part of the nuisance ordinance when it was originally created as the Roswell Smoke-Free Air Act. The D. Johnson Clean Air Act, which was the original state legislation that this was all based upon, has been amended and updated a number of times, and we need to bring our own legislation, our own ordinances up into compliance. Not only with that, but we also need to take into account the pending cannabis legislation, or the legislation and the rules and regulations that are coming before it. Of course, the New Mexico legislature, they did approve the Cannabis Regulation Act that establishing the framework, and that act provides that the local jurisdictions may adopt time, place, and manner rules, including rules, and this is the important part, that reasonably protect public health, safety, and welfare from the negative impacts associated with secondhand smoke of cannabis and cannabis-derived products. That is primarily the impetus for revising and moving this ordinance from the nuisance ordinance, which is where it sits now, I believe in chapter 16. I believe it's in chapter 16 right now. We are removing it from the nuisance section of the municipal code and moving it into the human rights section of the municipal code, chapter 14, which is where it rightfully belongs. The city council did previously determine that the smoking of tobacco and other plants, including cannabis, is a health hazard to individuals within enclosed spaces. But the city council has also determined that a right to breathe clean and unpolluted air is in fact a human right. The city council determination per the Roswell made those determinations pursuant to the Roswell Smoke-Free Air Act of 2004. City believes that that clean and unpolluted air is a human right, and secondhand smoke should not be simply considered a nuisance. That's a justification for moving it from one section of the municipal code to the other. The adoption of the State of New Mexico Cannabis Regulation Act creates an additional urgency for an ordinance update. Many of the requirements that the state is coming down with relative to cannabis and cannabis consumption in particular directly reference the D. Johnson Clean Air Act and all of its updates. So we have to be in lockstep with the state to move things forward. Okay. City of Roswell believes additional protections against secondhand smoke to protect public health, safety, and welfare are necessary. Okay. So some of the changes that we've made to the Clean Air Act, to our version of the Clean Air Act, we have updated the findings, purpose, and intent to include secondhand smoke of vape products and cannabis. Interestingly enough, because I get a lot of the information from the cannabis industry, there is now a major push by many of the providers of cannabis to create vapable products that include cannabis. In fact, there's a big push that says you get a much smoother high, you may get much more money for your value for your money and everything else by combining cannabis products and the vaping instruments.
You still hold it with tweezers?
Excuse me?
I'm joking.
Okay. Okay. We have updated our definitions. We've had to cross-reference between our Chapter 27, our Cannabis Act, and the Clean Air Act as well, to make sure that we are consistent across the board. We have updated some locations and rationale for exemptions for prohibition of smoking. Updated the unregulated smoking area section, again, primarily to deal with vaping and cannabis products. The declaration of a non-smoking establishment, again, upgrading the requirements for non-smoking establishment. Enforcement violations and penalties have been increased in lockstep with what we see the state and other communities doing. And then, of course, the effective date, this updated ordinance becomes effective within 5 days after it is approved by the full city council. Our city attorney has taken the time to wade through all of this with me and has reviewed the proposed ordinance and has recommended that the legal committee consider recommending to advertise and hold a public hearing to consider adoption of ordinance 21XX, which will repeal Chapter 16, Article 1 of the Smoke-Free Air Act and replace it with Chapter 14, Article 5, the Roswell Clean Air Act.
Okay, thank you. This is an ordinance. It would require a public hearing. So the most we could do today is approve to advertise at our November meeting. I would really like a red line copy of this. Did you have one or no?
We provided one to the entire committee a month ago.
I was wondering because I couldn't find it and I thought I had seen it. So this is pretty much a complete change, if I'm not mistaken, of what we had in Chapter 16.
Well, it is essentially, for all intents and purposes, it is a repeal and replace. Okay, but the verbiage holds pretty parallel to the previous act.
Okay.
Again, we're repealing the old, we're putting in the new and moving it to a different chapter. That's the purpose of repeal and replace. But then we are amending it to add in all the provisions for vaping and cannabis and bringing it up to a level of consistency with the amendments that have been made to the state code.
The state level, okay. Because I know when our Clean Air Act was first done and has been modified, it went very closely along with the state.
And
And you're saying this
still
does as well.
There's a handful of modifications specific to us because of we do have our own Cannabis Act.
Okay.
And so those changes though are directly to find that nexus between the cannabis consumption sections of our cannabis ordinance and then make sure that we are covered relative to especially outdoor consumption, the smoking, the vaping products and everything else that go along with cannabis consumption.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee?
I guess my only question is, I know that a number of years ago, some changes were made to allow for cigar bar.
Yes.
And I could not find exactly, I know it's here. I just have not dove in significantly enough to see. When you get into section 1443, prohibition of smoking, it says in A, except for in the following exceptions, smoking refers to, when I go back up here to the top, on line 2, inhaling, exhaling, burning, or carrying or holding of any lighted cigar, cigarette, or pipe, or any other lighted or heated tobacco or plant product intended for inhalation, including cannabis. So when you go to A, smoking as defined, right there, shall be prohibited except for, and then number 1, patio areas of private clubs that are designated outdoor smoking areas during such times and dates for those events previously authorized by a special permit used by the city clerk. It goes through here. So this would include as well for the smoking of cannabis. The way I read it, I just needed a clarification.
Provided that they, in addition to this, they have a appropriate special event permit under our cannabis ordinance, that they have an on-site consumption permit for our cannabis ordinance. They would need a lot more than just the basic smoking special event permit as outlined here. They still fall under all the regulations of our Chapter 27 cannabis for special events, for on-site consumption, and all of those other things too.
But do we run into any kind of concerns with the verbiage stating that smoking as defined in this section shall be prohibited except for, and then in number 1, patio areas of private clubs that are designated outdoor smoking areas during such which times and dates those events previously authorized by a special permit issued by the city clerk, limited to 4 events per month. Time and date of said events shall be conspicuously posted at the private club and on the club's website. No event shall last longer than 6 hours, and during such events, food service or drink by employees of the private club shall not take place in the outdoor designated smoking area. Would this A include the ability for cannabis as written in definitions under smoking? I guess that's my,
They would overlap. And I'll tell you, the way that the state law addresses this is when they talk about it, they say there shall be no smoking in these places. And one of the excepts for, and then one of them is a cannabis consumption area as defined in the Cannabis Regulation Act. So they don't even really, the state law doesn't bother to mess around with cannabis. They just refer you back to the Cannabis Regulation Act and don't really address it at all, except to say smoking includes cannabis, so you better be following the Cannabis Regulation Act.
And in this particular case, if you were doing a Cannabis Act, the city clerk cannot issue the permit for a special event. Only the city council can issue a permit for a special event, because that requires a conditional use permit and basically 6 months of planning.
I just want to ensure that we don't have any lost in the weeds confusion by someone looking at this and saying, oh, I have this club and we have smoking for this 4 times a month. Now you can smoke your pot there as well.
The only way they could do that is if they had a valid on-site consumption permit as well. Okay. If they had a club, a private club, and if they applied and followed all the rules to obtain an on-site consumption permit from the city and from the state as well, then they could potentially allow it, yes.
That I'm just making sure if they're looking at this document that they don't say your document here, according to definition of smoking, allows me to have this. As long as y'all agree that it does not, y'all are the experts, not me. I just know if I'm confused a little bit by that, I sure would think somebody else is going to be. So do y'all confirm that this language is solid in that area, or should something be changed?
I mean, I wouldn't think it would be a bad idea to just do what the state has done and actually refer back to the cannabis regulations.
That's what I'm
Explicitly. So that I agree with you, because what Kevin is saying is that you wouldn't be allowed to get the smoking under this without getting the.
I get it.
Yeah, right.
But I've been involved in hours and hours of meetings.
And so that's why I say the state law.
We could, and that's what I'm thinking. We just had an A2 there that would redirect them for cannabis special events. Please see chapter.
I would feel much better about tying it to something. I only know because I've been involved with so many hours of our meetings. I can just see someone.
Okay.
Okay.
But I will come up with we can definitely come up with some language. We'll just go ahead and insert it as A2.
Okay.
Referring back to our special event on on-site consumption requirements under the Cannabis Act. Since we'll be talking about those in just a few minutes anyway. It's easy enough to do.
I think I'm concerned of repeating things in 2 places. We've talked about this so many times.
That means I'm supposed to be taking medicine.
We'll do it.
I don't have it with me, so
well, then don't do it. But take it later. How difficult it always is to remember if we're going to change something in one place to change it in the other places that it's located. So I'm just wondering too, if there's an opportunity to refer back to chapter 27 with so much of this instead of repeating it, because some of it looks a little different, but not exactly. And so I just would like to see us ensure that we don't have that confusion as to what we refer to where, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we could probably look at that. I mean, some of the definitions here
Yeah, I'm looking specific at that.
are not even used in this ordinance, so I don't think we need them. Like reciprocal paid participant. We need to define that when it doesn't discuss reciprocal participants anywhere in it. Just as an example.
Would you agree with that, Kevin, or you see a reason to repeat things in two places?
Well, there, like I said, we understand that there is the potential for confusion both directions. I mean, if for some reason we modified one ordinance and changed the definition and then didn't modify it the other ordinance, there would be some confusion. There's also though the potential for confusion though, if we just refer back somebody that they'll miss that reference to go back. Either way, it's up to staff to make sure that they know and understand what is in every ordinance. That's what we're here for, is when somebody comes forward and they want to have a cannabis special event, is to remind them that they fall under both ordinances, not just one or the other. And so there's always a potential for, I was dealing with the website. There's a potential for broken links and there's a potential for misinformation. But we just have to do our best. One of to make sure that we are comprehensive when we make adjustments and changes. And it's going to be part and parcel of what we're going to be doing with both of these acts here. In fact, I got some information across my desk today that's going to require an amendment to that the state is putting some new rules in place that is going to require amendment to our Cannabis Act.
I know you didn't see that coming.
No, but this is actually, I did not see this particular change coming. This is new to me, but how to deal with it. But I don't necessarily, I know we've been trying to trim especially the definitions area down and keep our definitions. I mean, there are a couple of other things in here. I know that possibly reciprocal participant, qualified patient could possibly come out.
Well, I see a lot of them. I mean, I don't see cannabis consumption area mentioned, cannabis consumption facility, cannabis retailer are mentioned in this anywhere. Advertisement, I don't think is mentioned. So I see several definitions in here that I don't think we, strictly speaking, need because they're not terms that are dealt with in this ordinance. So maybe we can look at removing some of those.
We've just seen over the years, again, never done intentionally, but we change something somewhere and don't change it another. And it leaves us kind of open. Barry, any comments?
Nope. It's clear as mud for me.
Great.
I am going to request one, we need to do one change to this. On page 73,
Okay.
section 14-46B3. B3.
Yes. Okay. I wondered.
Fine not exceeding $1,000. We cannot do a fine of $1,000. We are limited, but to $500.
So we've got 250 and 500.
Yeah, I think we could, if you want to do it, is just the first one, the first violation is 250 and then any violation thereafter is up to 5. That would probably be the easiest fix for that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're combining 2 and 3 then?
Yeah.
So basically,
A fine not exceeding $500 for each additional violation.
so actually we're eliminating
2.
2 and we're changing the 1,000 to 500.
Yeah, right. Either way you want to think about it.
Got it.
As set by state.
That's statute. Got it.
All right. Any other comments?
No, ma'am.
Well, what would you prefer with this?
Oh, I think that I have a motion that would allow us to move it on to council if you'd like, or would you like to
Go
just
ahead.
see the new information brought to? If you'd like it sent to the next meeting, I'm comfortable with that as well.
Well, I know Kevin's anxious to move on with this and.
Well, it won't slow it
it's
up to
only-
do that,
no,
though.
It won't.
Okay.
Because we're only advertised, not only, but we have to do the advertising process first. So we have
So,
2 months.
Madam Chair,
Our next meeting is before the next city council meeting,
Right.
this is the special, so even if we had
Oh, you're
a
talking-
meeting on this.
Sure, that too.
We can still hear it at the same city council meeting.
Right.
so do you want to just have a general consensus? My consensus would be, my thoughts would be I'm comfortable with moving it to our next
Moving
meeting.
it to the
to the November 6th meeting.
Fourth.
Yeah, we're not coming on Saturday. It ain't happening.
So we're really loading that meeting up, folks, if we're not careful, but the other items shouldn't be that long.
Just see if Counselor Foster also agrees.
I
You-
agree.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So by consensus, we're going to move the Clean Air Act ordinance to our special meeting on November 4th to give us some time to look at this and to see if we want to make any changes before we advertise it. Okay?
Advertising for the November 4th meeting is going to be, okay, no, advertising for the full public hearing.
November 18th.
Place for a month.
No,
It can
no.
still be November 18th.
Right,
All right.
because we will have the meeting on November 4th. It will then be on the next council meeting, which will be the 11th. So it doesn't change the schedule.
18th.
It's having another.
Okay. What do we need to do between now and November 4th to be prepared for that meeting? Do we make red line changes?
Yeah.
For review?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
red line for review and also,
Parker and I then to look at things that might be pulled out as well. We'll just line them out.
yeah, that may be
Correct them.
cleaner if we just refer it back to chapter 27 or something.
You can do that.
Do we have another cannabis committee or whatever that's called?
Not
Between the-
next,
Monday.
not till the 8th.
There's no meeting.
So please don't forget that A2 in that section.
Yeah, no, we got it.
All right.
Okay, so thank you. We will address it at our special legal committee meeting. Let's move on. We actually have four franchise.
What, we got one more. It's about cannabis.
Oh, did I miss?
Got the actual
Not
cannabis.
getting out of that one.
Oh, we were just on the Clean Air Act.
Yep.
Sorry. Number 6, our to chapter 27 cannabis, which is on page 75 of our packet.
There we go.
Kevin, again, would like to present this to us.
Madam Chair, thank you for once again recognizing this. I do have one change on the background. We could, right at the very top, maybe for the full council, get my name spelled correctly. That would be nice. We've been working hard on this, which is why I'm glad to have it brought forward again. This is going to be our second amendment to the cannabis ordinance. We've set the basic framework, which established chapter 27 a couple of months ago. We brought forward the amendment number 1, which is fleshing things out and has been approved and has moved forward. Now we come back in and we're still filling in some of the gaps and making some minor adjustments and changes. Again, I mentioned city staff is still awaiting information and updates related to the processing of cannabis. We are getting those almost daily here. I'm sure you get the same email blast.
I don't read them all. You do.
Okay, I get them regularly, and something caught my eye today that we'll have to take up in the next amended version, and that has to do with labor employment contracts and labor employment agreements. It appears that the CCD now wants to ensure that labor unions are not in any way prohibited or restricted from organizing our cannabis establishments, with a couple of minor revisions, but that's for a future amendment. Again, we still believe that taking this incremental approach allows city council to debate every aspect of the ordinance and to ensure that it is in fact comprehensive. Amendment number 2 will enhance a specific number of sections and subsections in chapter 27. This predominantly consists of those sections concerning municipal operational permit conditions and requirements. One of the big discussions that we've been having, because I started off using the term our local regulatory requirements, because we want no confusion between the state regulatory and licensing requirements and our local operational permit, which falls under the heading of the ability of us to regulate time, place, and manner. We felt that the term operational was better than regulatory. So These considerations of the ordinance here we do set forth, and that's why it was so important that we have the Clean Air Act also prior to this, is because this section of the ordinance establishes the framework for on-site consumption permits. We're going back and forth, cross-referencing that. Cannabis special event requirements. We add a few different additional definitions, and we add some zoning and development standards. Okay. Just taking a look at the individual articles that were put in here. Article 2 added a handful of additional definitions. Article 6, we set forward the project application requirements, our operational permit requirements, the ability of the city to deny, suspend, revoke, and force surrender of a ordinance, of a license that is granted but being found to be either inactive or inappropriately issued, and an appeal process as well in case the cannabis establishment operator disagrees with our assessment. We're requiring emergency contact and community regulations managers to be established prior to permit. Our inspections requirements, enforcement of violations are issued there, and liability and indemnification. That's one of the things that we are still very concerned about. As much as we appreciate the work that was done up in Santa Fe, Washington, D.C. still disagrees with Santa Fe and a whole bunch of other state capitals. So we need an indemnification agreement, liability indemnification agreements with our cannabis operators. Article 7 establishes the CCAN, that is our commercial cannabis zone. The updates the designations, and then also updates the definitions on the ICANN zone. Article 8, operational permits, additional information specific to industrial permits, industrial operations. Article 9 is additional permit applications and requirements for our retail establishments. Article 10, again, deals with on-site cannabis consumption, and Article 11, cannabis special events. City attorney has spent way too much time helping me with this, and I appreciate all of his help. Of course, our cannabis subcommittee, we've spent many, many hours putting this together, and everyone has had a chance to review the proposed ordinance. And we recommend that the legal committee recommend to advertise to hold a public hearing to consider the adoption of proposed ordinance 21XX, which will enhance chapter 27.
Okay, thank you. There is no need for a red line version of this because this is all new material. So it's all additional to what we've already approved.
In fact, just as a way of explanation, if you see any red lines in this act, which you will see, look on page 77 under article or section 2752. There's a red line there, any location or activity prohibited by section 27. That's because that needs to come out of our already approved and adopted ordinance. That was an error or a mistake or a correction that needs to be done. So any red lines in here are direction to pull that out of the existing ordinance and replace it with what's there.
Right. On that point, though, I think we need to follow one procedure or the other and either have underlines and strike throughs for new material or else not, because it's going to be confusing for the codifier when some things are struck through and other things are new, but they're not underlined. The way,
That's true.
It would be better to have, and I think, for example, where you have cannabis project applications, you jump straight into subsection F. We have not typically done it that way. We would write the whole section 52 out and then describe section F and then strike through and underline new things that are there for clarity rather than jumping straight into subsection F. It's not how we've done it in the past. So I don't think that's not a substantive change, but I think it would help. If we're going to do strike throughs, I would prefer that it all be red line. We don't need to make it red because that's for our internal consumption. But for the ordinance, having strike throughs and underlines everywhere where things are new or being taken out consistently rather than sometimes and then not in other places.
Okay, I think the word consistent.
Everything would be underlined.
Very important.
That which is strike through.
Well, no, for example, here, I mean, are you saying that in F, an exhibit or map drawn at an appropriate engineering scale is all new? Is that, it's all?
That's all new. Everything is new. If it's not redlined out, everything is new.
Yeah, see that the codifier is going to be super confused by that, I think.
But I think that's something y'all can.
Yeah, that's an
determine.
easy thing to fix. I'm just pointing that out. I think we need to pick a lane with that.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Counselor Foster?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions or comments or concerns or anything?
No. No, I'm good.
Okay. Counselor Perry?
Well, I read this in my sleep.
I know.
I've looked at it so many times, so I'm ready to, I know, and I just want to say thank you to staff for Counselor Stubbs and myself and Counselor Best. I know sometimes elected officials can be rather stubborn and frustrating to deal with, but it's part of the process to bring it to where it needs to be. And so I think that what we have is something that we can wholeheartedly take to council and understand and be able to soak up and really have something great. So I appreciate the work that's gone into that. So I'm ready to make a motion.
One of the things,
Go ahead.
one of the recommendations that you have made, Counselor Perry, and we've been listening, is that we are going to put together a full document because we're getting into where we've got bits and pieces now that we're starting to fill out and flesh out. And we believe that the council needs to see how it all fits together. This may also help with our codifier situation as well. If we have one comprehensive, complete document, we are in the process of preparing that. And that's where we can take the stuff that's already adopted and then anything new like this Amendment 2, we can do in a underlined format. All this is new, and that way we would have that clean.
That's what we're used to seeing, and that'll help us.
Well, and that's good for internal consumption, but the codifier is never going to see that. They're the ones whose job it is to create that whole official document. And so they're trying to read what we're doing here and figure out what we meant from it.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to be as clear.
So y'all can handle that internally and.
Yeah, we'll take care of that internally. We'll figure out how to do it because the problem is with any comprehensive ordinance like this is that this thing is, when it's all said and done, we're talking 60, 70, 80 pages, and we haven't even dealt with the issue of taxation, which may come up at a later date. It's lengthy.
And I don't think we have to write out the entire thing here but just for example, where we have 2752, we would include that entire section.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need to include any sections that are not being modified.
Not being modified.
Yeah, I'll keep talking. I'm going to call the question. I'm kidding. I'm aggravating you. All right.
Please.
Madam Chair, I move that we send this to full council for a regular November meeting for advertisement to hold a public meeting for the consideration of adoption of this proposed ordinance, which will amend Chapter 27 of the Roswell City Code relating to cannabis.
Second.
Good. We have a motion and a second, basically, to send our second amendment on the cannabis Article 27 to full council to advertise and approve for a public hearing. Any further comments or questions?
I just love the Second Amendment. So.
There will be
I have heard that. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll see this actually by consent next week on our legal committee meeting and to advertise at the November 18th council meeting. Good. Okay. Now, good to see you.
Good to see you guys. I'll see you next month.
Great. Now we have our 4 franchise agreements, right?
Yep.
And although they have different names attached, they're basically the same agreement. So you want to address them all pretty much
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yes. So, okay. So Section 2111 of our city code provides us with the exclusive right to engage in the collection of solid waste within the city and disposal thereof. It's basically an exclusive right, and that exclusive right comes out of state statute. However, state statute provides further that in the exercise of our exclusive right, we may delegate and contract those services out to a private entity. However, solid waste is considered a public utility in the sense that it is a provider of an essential or necessary service to the public. And that means that it is subject to provisions on municipal franchises, because when it comes to public utilities, you got to grant a franchise. So pursuant to, again, state code, franchises are granted pursuant to an ordinance, which becomes effective after 30 days if there's not a petition filed objecting to the granting of the franchise. So each of these four are companies that we're dealing with here today are companies that are currently already have franchise agreements with the city and are to greater or lesser extent actually providing services in the city. To my understanding, it's all commercial stuff. There's nobody doing residential except for the city itself. So what I found was looking at these agreements that a lot of them go back, a franchise ordinance lasts for 25 years and then it expires and you have to redo a new one. What I found was that looking back at these, basically all of them had franchise ordinances that had expired or frankly didn't exist at all. And so then we also have some that don't have, agreements that are in place. So, I mean, we were all over the show with it. And so, following up, you'll remember last year we did all this kind of preparatory work by getting ready with the J&A recycling franchise ordinance. And so all of the work on the front end in terms of how to do this had been put in place. Good. So now we're coming back and cleaning up, our situation with regard to the franchises that are not just doing recycling, but just doing all types of solid waste services for commercial entities in the city. So there's four of them, and I'll kind of run through them real quick. There's Waste Management. They have a agreement with us from August 10, 2017, which we recently renewed for another year, just the agreement.
Okay.
But the franchise ordinance dates from 1994, which is more than 25 years ago. So this, by granting them the ordinance, we will reauthorize their franchise. The next one is Witcamp. Again, they have a solid waste services agreement from December 2002. However, I could not find an actually adopted and executed franchise ordinance for them. So this would grant them that franchise ordinance.
I remember.
So what I was able to find when I went and looked in the city clerk is that she had an ordinance number. What the ordinance was the agreement. And it wasn't an ordinance.
Not the ordinance?
Yeah, it was really weird. In any event, since the city clerk doesn't seem to have a copy of the ordinance, it effectively doesn't exist, and she's the repository of the official records of the city. So we're going to clean that up. Okay, the next one is Southwest Disposal. They have a franchise agreement from 1995 and an ordinance from 1995. Both of those are now expired. So we are going to do their ordinance here with the other ones. And then lastly, I have Desert West. Thank you. I called them Desert Southwest, but they're actually Desert West. They have an agreement from 2011. But they also do not have a duly adopted franchise ordinance that I could locate in the records of the city clerk. So again, so these are gonna, all four of these I'm bringing forward to advertise. And then, like I said, once the council adopts them, they actually sit in it for 30 days to see if anyone wants to file a petition. And they have to get a certain number of signatures. I don't remember how many right now. To petition it, to object to the granting of the franchise, in which case we would actually have to have a special election to determine whether to grant the franchise or not, interestingly. The concept here is that once we actually adopt the franchise ordinances, we're going to come back with these companies and do fresh agreements with all of them. because the agreements that we have are, again, from the 90s, and they're not really up to date with the way that we're doing things these days. That's kind of the longer term plan, and we'll see those agreements coming through in the next couple of months after we have set the ball rolling on all 4 of these ordinances.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had no idea until I read through this that there were actually 4 of them out there.
Actually, neither did we.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Are all 4 of them in operation currently, or do we even know that? They are, Abram? Good.
Witcamp is the most, they utilize our
Yes.
services the most. Waste management is very limited. Desert West is limited, and what's the other one?
Southwest Disposal.
They're active. But they
That one.
service, the franchise agreement they had was 20-yard containers and above home.
Oh,
No residential.
okay, yeah.
So the way
Interesting.
the way that we're drafting these ordinances is that they're general in form, and then the specifics are to be determined in the franchise agreement, which follows up.
Good.
So even
That
though the
makes
ordinance
sense.
lasts for 25 years, we're going to create a shorter term on the agreement so that, after 5 years, we can come back with them or whatever the term is and say, well, we need to adjust the scope of what you're doing.
Good, good. Well, thank you for doing that work and figuring out that we didn't have some things. I have a question. I hope I'm not opening a keg of eels.
Yep.
Is there not a franchise fee involved in this? Is that what
Yes.
becomes part of the agreement?
That we do that in the agreement.
Can you just explain?
What do we typically charge? 7% of gross receipts
Yes.
is our franchise fee. 7% of gross receipts.
7%. So it's been that forever, for a while. And-
Yeah.
And they're consecutive. They're all the same.
Yes, they all have that. And that's what we did with J&A too, just to keep it, we do this with
Okay,
everybody.
that was the same. Okay, good. All right. So that's part of the actual agreement. Right now, we're looking only at the ordinance. So any questions or comments of these? I think we have to handle them individually.
Yeah.
But they are, oh, you've already individualized your packet.
I may have them out of order, but
We'll live through that. Actually, the first one is waste management.
did Councilor Foster have anything before I make motions?
Well, I was just going to add that the 7% is only on people who reside, or businesses that reside within the city of Roswell, correct?
Oh, yeah, sure. And we wouldn't have authority to require them to pay us a franchise fee on anything they did outside of the city limits.
Correct. All right. Well, I just wanted to put that in, but I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council at the next council meeting to advertise, recommendation to advertise and hold public meeting, to hold a public hearing to consider the adoption of the proposed ordinance granting a franchise to Waste Management of New Mexico Incorporated for the collection, transportation, and disposal of solid waste as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Great. We have a second and a motion again to consider a public hearing to grant the franchise for solid waste collection within the city to Waste Management of New Mexico. Abram, did you have any comments you wanted to make on any of
I'm
this?
just glad we're cleaning it all up because as we dig in more, as my team is digging in more and more, we're finding a lot of this stuff and we want to get it, let's get it
Great.
organized and up to date.
Appreciate that. Good. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I'll make a
Go ahead.
motion that we send to full council at the next meeting, a recommendation to advertise, to hold a public hearing to consider the adoption of the proposed ordinance granting a franchise to Witcamp Disposal Company for the collection, transportation, and disposal of solid waste as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to advertise for a public hearing for the franchise ordinance with Witcamp on solid waste disposal. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of sending that to full council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, item number 9 is Southwest Disposal franchise.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we send to full council the recommendation to advertise to hold a public hearing to consider the adoption of proposed ordinance granting a franchise to Southwest Disposal Corporation for the collection, transportation, and disposal of solid waste as presented.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second to again advertise for public hearing and grant a franchise fee to Southwest Disposal for solid waste collection and transportation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. And our fourth franchise ordinance is with Desert Southwest.
Desert West.
Desert West. Sorry.
Madam Chair, I make a recommendation that we send to full council on regular agenda. The recommendation to advertise, to hold a public hearing, to consider adoption of proposed ordinance granting a franchise to Desert West Enterprises LLC for the collection, transportation, and disposal of solid waste as presented today.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to again send proposed ordinance granting a franchise fee to Desert West for solid waste collection, transportation, and disposal. The full council to have a public hearing or advertise and have a public hearing. Do I say who? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We have our franchise fees up to date and ready to go to council. Thank you both all very, very much. This concludes all of our business. We have our department reports.
I'd like to hear them all.
Bring them in. Bring them forward. These are from the city clerk, legal departments, safety, and HR, and I appreciate getting the information as we do in all our other committees. It's a good summation of what's going on. As we've sort of discussed, we are going to have a special called meeting on November 4th at 4 o'clock here in this room to get some or to consider some items for both finance and general services committees that were unable to meet this week. So we'll have that. Plus we've added 2 items.
EDC and Clean Air Act.
EDC and Clean Air Act from this meeting to go forward with that. So any other comments or questions or discussion or concerns or anything? Then we stand adjourned at 6:04. Oh, did I hear something?
Yes, you did, Judy.
Oh, sorry, I can't see.
And I would like to explain why I request so many reports from the city clerk's office. And I want to thank Kevin. Is that you in the red shirt over there, Kevin?
Yes, it is.
He and I had a discussion, and he now has put all of his PowerPoints on the agenda, so I don't have to ask the city clerk for his PowerPoints. There is one person who constantly never puts PowerPoints on the agenda, and that is the reason why I have asked for so many of these reports. But I thank everybody who has done that, so I don't have to take up the clerk's time or my time. Sometimes I have to ask for 3, 4, 5 in the same PowerPoint, because otherwise I am told by the city clerk that I need to come up to the office, take the assistant clerk's time, my time, and then run up to the annex building to pay for the reports that I want. And this takes up a lot of time. And that is why that there are so many requests from me, is because 1 or 2 people refuse to put their PowerPoints on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jerry.
Rita,
Yes,
I didn't hear you congratulate the Atlanta Braves.
I didn't. I mean, you know,
Could be why.
so therefore I really don't care. I have Atlanta Braves fans and I have Will Cavan, who's a diehard Astro fan.
Uh-oh, okay. I'm just picking at you.
I know you are.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions, concerns from anyone? Okay, appreciate all of you attending, and we will reconvene legal next week. Adjourned at 6:06.